it's like a non-joke. So I should start the joke again?
Yeah, so we're recording now. So yeah, go ahead. Let's start from the beginning of the joke, because like I said, I did not get this punchline until just now as you were telling the joke. And that's the difference between reading a joke and telling a joke, you know?
Yeah. The two scientists walk into a bar. The first says, I'll have H2O. I'll have H2O too, says the second. The bartender gives them both water because he's able to distinguish the boundary tones that dictate grammatical function of homonyms in coda position.
So,
and well as pragmatic context.
So let's see if I get the joke, okay? Because like I said, when I read this joke, I went searching for this joke because you emailed me the Twitter account and didn't tell the joke, and I was like, yeah, go, and you were just being a teacher, like go find it, you know. So I went and I looked, and actually, one of the funny things is when I saw it, I typed in your name and then I typed in Twitter, and I found when I found the joke, someone else on Twitter had retweeted the joke and gave you credit for it. Just so you know. I know, I'm just saying. So like, you know, so somebody along the line learned a lesson or something, or took or said, I'm not making that mistake, you know, or I don't know. And you didn't even know it was a mistake. And like you said, how are you supposed to know? But here's what I think the joke means. If this only comes from doing research. So if you don't get this, anybody's watching, don't feel bad. Cause like, I mean, this took me days. So there's a joke about two scientists that walk into a bar, and one says, give me H2O. And the other one says, well, give me a beer. We're not working. And thus an assassination attempt was averted. Now, to get that joke, you have to understand what H2O is, which is water, right? But you also have to anticipate that instead of ordering a beer, the second scientist would say, give me H2O too. And then you have to know that H2O2 is the nomenclature for hydrogen peroxide, right? And then you have to know that drinking hydrogen peroxide would be poisonous to you, and that the motive of the first scientist was to set up the second scientist in order to assassinate him. You have to assume that. And so all this stuff has to be there for this joke to work, right? And then in order to get your joke, you have to know that joke. And then you have to understand that like there's an implied comma, right? Or there's a pause between H2O, 2, and then you have to like get that fancy like what do you want to call it? Linguistic explanation for what occurred in the bartender's mind, which is great. I think it's all great, but like, how many people are gonna get that? Like. It's not a knock-knock joke, you know. It's definitely not a knock-knock joke.
It's interesting that many people thought it was hilarious, and the comments, thousands of comments, were like, I'm still laughing at that joke, and it's been days.
Well, I'm glad. That's a more intelligent audience than I usually told jokes for. That's fantastic.
I felt like I made people laugh, whether or not I stole it, and.
You didn't steal.
I didn't get credit.
That's not stealing.
It just said Diane Turnshek, astronomer, science fiction writer. I didn't propose they send money to a charity or nothing.
Right.
Like I tried really hard not to be like, I'm using this to make something of it. But
yeah, that's the internet, you know. I mean, I was watching Stephen Wright's very first appearance on Johnny Carson, right? I was watching that the other day. So he's telling this classic joke, right? About I walk into my apartment and everything has been replaced with an exact replica. My roommate says, hey, Steve. And I said, do I know you? Am I stealing by telling that joke right now? I don't think Stephen Wright's gonna like track me down and say, look, man, I wrote that joke in 1977 and you stole it. You know, like I think he's gonna be happy that somebody remembered his joke, right? I don't know. Me have a life of their own. They just take off, you know. You put them out there in the universe and they develop their own thing. That's why they're called a meme, right? Because they evolve and they and they populate whatever dark corners of the web that they find, you know? But that was your brush with like internet fame. That's awesome. Everybody can say that happened to them. That's for sure.
Using my platform for good is what I'm trying to do.
Right. Right.
All my things. So that brings me to the environmentalist part of my 3 things. So the triangulation, we've evolved it into an environmental science fiction, fantasy, and horror anthology. So dark
why did you add horror? That's interesting, because for some reason sci-fi and horror always get like lumped together. What is that?
It's really strange because I'm not crazy about horror.
Neither am I.
In a lot of cases, the only case that I really like horror is when somebody has such a horrible time that I put the book down and I'm like, glad I'm not that person.
Yeah.
Happy
yeah.
me.
It's like when somebody slips. Yeah, when somebody slips on a banana peel, you're laughing not because they got hurt. You're laughing because you're relieved that it's not you. Like that's where that laughter comes from. It's not cruel laughter. It's relief. You know.
Yeah. It's very hard for me to pick horror stories, and there's basically the next one in the line, Extinction. It's about species extinction and the loss of biodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's science fiction, fantasy, and horror stories about this. And I picked like one story that was horror because it's depressing to think about this. I don't want a book of depressing things. It's a book of fun, exciting, just ridiculously interesting, creative things. And we got tagged. We got one of our reviews was like, there wasn't much horror in there. I'm sorry. So the one we're doing this week, I'm finishing picking stories, is Triangulation Habitats. And it's about sustainable environments and homes and houses.
That can be uplifting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been fun. I tend, especially the more dreary the year is, the more fun I want to put in this book.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of habitats, you did something that very few people that are watching are going to ever do, but you entered a habitat a self-contained habitat with 3 other people, I think it was, or I forget. No, 5 other people.
There were 6 of us all together.
To simulate what it would be like to be on Mars, right?
Yeah.
It's in the desert in Utah, is that correct?
As soon as I heard about it, I was like, I want to do that. I never even knew this existed. The Mars Society has these habitats around the world, and they open them up. You have to apply and have a good reason for why you want to go, and you have to pay room and board to go. And I decided I wanted to do it. And I was talking to my TA in my astronomy class, and I was like, this is so cool. And the department is going to pay for me. And she goes, I want to go. And I'm like, okay, let's both go. So we both so Nora Swisher and I went on this adventure for weeks. We flew to Colorado, and then someone picked us up and drove us hours into the middle of, I don't know where, Bryce Canyon area desert, where it looks like red rock. It's just all red, no vegetation. You're up at over 7,000 feet. So it's high and dry and deserty. It looks like Mars with all the layers and the stripes. And we got in this little, basically it's the fuselage of a rocket, 30 feet across, round canister of a habitat, called it the HAB. And we did a simulated Martian adventure where we studied the human factors of space flight. So we studied isolation and food fatigue with that horrible rehydrated, dehydrated food that was just like, I understand why astronauts get so sick of it. They have changed now because of these kinds of studies. They have changed what astronauts get to eat instead of like that toothpaste tube of goo. Like they now actually get food. So.
Well, the SpaceX launch that happened, last Friday? They got beef bourguignon.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, my goodness.
That's so much better. Oh
my
goodness. our stuff.
See, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm one of those people where like 90% of the time I'm eating because I need food, I need sustenance. So like blueberries and oatmeal again? Okay, no problem. But 10% of the time I want something. I want what I want, I want chocolate, or I want like,
fresh oranges.
it's obviously my body telling me like, wake up, we need nutrients, we need something different,
So we were out there and we were doing really good. You're wearing spacesuits, through it in an airlock where you stand there for the longest time, and then you go out, and we actually got to ride dune buggies through the desert, and we had this whole thing. The only thing that was weird is here we are in full sim, and there was a movie crew outside running around with shorts with boom arm microphones.
Yeah. Fuzzy microphone.
This one point we were hiking and we came up to a rise, and you feel like you're on Mars, you're in a spacesuit, and there was in the valley, one of the people was like, are those cows?
Cows on Mars?
It was the weirdest disconnect, and they got that in the movie.
That's great. But yeah, it's amazing what your mind can adapt to, right?
Yeah, but that was funny.
So how long were you there? Like, how long were you in the rocket fuselage? And the rocket fuselage makes sense because you'd have that, right? You could bring that down and use that as a habitat, or you could land with it, or you could have chutes or whatever. But so how long were you in the habitat? Like,
the first day, we had tiny little bedrooms. Each of us had our own door and our own bedrooms, but the bed was over the other person's bed. Like, the bed was just a wooden platform, and you threw your sleeping bag on it. And then the other person they were in their room, and they had to go low while you went high. So you were in your own capsulated room, but that guy snored so bad.
Yeah, so you're out.
Threw my suitcase over a chair because that was the only place for it. And then I leaned over to lift my suitcase up, and I broke a rib the first day.
You broke a rib?
Yep.
Ow.
And I didn't tell anybody.
Like an astronaut would do.
Like an astronaut, exactly.
Yeah, like Chuck Yeager, right, in the right stuff where he can't latch the thing close, so he fashions a broom handle so he can do it. You're the right stuff right there.
I didn't tell anybody. And I did all the shit painfully.
You got what it takes.
Oh, it was awful. And you could see, like in the pictures, my tool belt is slung real low. Nothing was going over this section.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were there a couple of weeks.
You're like, we were there a couple of weeks. I'd be counting minutes. You were there a couple of weeks.
It was hard to keep quiet about that. But yeah, but it was fun. We wanted to stay. It was gorgeous. And anybody can go. It's called the Mars Desert Research Station. Look it up and go. It's so much fun. And I was looking for verisimilitude in my fiction, but and red dust is everywhere. And like, there's so many things that you just can't imagine until you do them. You pick up a rock off the ground, and then you go to blow the dust off. You're in a spacesuit, and so you're like, oh, that didn't work.
Have you ever gone scuba diving?
Yes.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess there's an analogy there. Because I've experienced that. I've never done a Martian habitat, but I've gone scuba diving, and it's like, yeah, you get used to things real fast because your body knows what it needs to do to survive, like breathe. So there's some things that you think you might want to do, and your body's like, you can't do that. Can't do that. But when you have your own oxygen pack, yeah, that makes sense that you would try to, do that. That's awesome. That's amazing.
So I've done a lot of things because I really wanted to be an astronaut. One of the students who graduated from CMU, who is the president of the astronomy club, Matt Finley, and I we designed a city for Mars. We entered it into an international competition and came in second in the architecture category.
Wow. And you're not architects.
Yeah, color wheel.
Awesome.
City. The idea was that everybody gets the same space, but there's a color wheel design, so they always know where they are. It's a
I see.
kilometer across, because the human eye can differentiate a million colors. So darker on the outside and lighter on the inside, and you can just always know where you are in the city just by that. I led a team of biomedical engineering CMU students to win a competition to make life better for astronauts a few years ago. That was life in space. And we designed a wearable resistance suit where, they have to exercise for like 2.5 hours a day on a treadmill. We designed this suit that would give them 1G of resistance every time they moved anything. And they would have different kind of hinges for each kind of
Yeah, I actually have something kind of like that.
torture suit.
Like weighted gloves,
Oh yeah.
So you can just wear them and then go about your day and you're getting that resistance. But yeah, I know that's a big deal for astronauts.
Those wouldn't work. So microgravity, those wouldn't work.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. Yeah, that wouldn't work at all.
And then the other thing,
it'd be great if you could do it as a passive thing, because otherwise they have to devote like 2 hours a day to exercise. Like on the space station, don't they have to do 2 hours? That's a long time for a lot of people. I mean, I exercise every day, but I don't exercise for 2 hours every day. Exercise for I've gotten to the point where I can consolidate a pretty good strength workout in a half hour. It used to be an hour, but I've been able to figure it out.
I'm looking right behind you. Is that an exercise torture?
Yeah, that's my hat rack. I don't use that. I go outside. At first I did. I mean, at one point well, this is kind of funny. I guess I didn't always exercise. There was a place I was working, and somebody told me that a guy came in looking for me, said, "Hey, where's that guy? Where's that bartender? That short, pudgy, balding bartender." And I said, "Wow, so that's how people see me, huh? Okay." I said, "Well, I can't do anything about the short. I was born that way, and I actually kind of like it. And the balding thing, I guess I could take drugs or something, but I'm not. I mean, I'm vain, but I'm not going to put chemicals in my body, vain, And then I said, but the pudgy thing, I can do something about that. So I used that. I used that as a mantra, as a motivational mantra, and I started exercising. And I started with a bike. And I was doing the bike like crazy because it keeps your calorie count, and there's goals, and you can do all that kind of stuff. It's not like Peloton, this is ancient technology, but it's probably the type of thing you'd find on a space station. And because it's lightweight and it's compact. But then what I found was I lost weight, but I had no strength because I was doing all this cardio, right? So like astronauts, right? I was atrophying my muscles. I mean, my legs were good, but I couldn't lift anything. And my buddy at work, he said, "Have you ever heard of P90X?" And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." I thought he was talking about some kind of drug or something. No, it was an exercise program that became kind of famous in the mid 2000s. And it's like an hour-long workout every day. And you do push-ups, pull-ups, use dumbbells, there's yoga. There's all kinds of neat stuff. There's karate. So I did do that as a kid. So so I got some of that. But anyway, a lot of that appealed to me. It was hard, but it was really hard. But what he started to do was the guy that created that workout, he was awesome. And I owe him a ton, I owe him a debt of gratitude. He started to realize not everybody's going to work out for 90 days. That's what the 90 is in P90X. 90 days of 1 hour a day. And actually the yoga was an hour and a half. I mean, you felt great afterwards, but who's got an hour and a half on a Saturday they want to give up? So he started to consolidate them. And and then I started to learn how to do that. So you can do multiple moves at the same time. You can do different exercises that work different muscle groups at the same time. So you can get it down to about a half hour. And I can do that. I can do a half hour a day. I think anybody can do that. But
that's very cool.
But this is the type of thing that astronauts are going to need to worry about, right? They're going to have to worry about muscle atrophy. They're going to worry about fatigue. You said cuisine fatigue. But but these might also be characteristics that are, this may be how you select a crew, right? So you select a crew based on a couple things, right? You're going to have affability. You're going to have somebody that doesn't get like upset at every little thing breaking. You're going to have problem solvers. I mean, all of these sorts of like psychological traits. I'm sure. Did you guys take a test? Did you have to take a psych test or anything before you did this?
Not for that experience.
Mm-hmm.
We did a million tests for when I went to join a group that was testing to send civilians to space. So this was Nastar, facility outside of Philadelphia, where they have a centrifuge. And so we went there, and boy, did we have to take so many tests, because first they needed physical tests. We had to eat EKGs and all that, just to be sure that we weren't going to die when they threw us in the center. And they trained us for how not to pass out and how to keep the blood flow to your brain, which is squeezing all large muscle groups when you feel like you're losing, losing consciousness. And then they put us in the centrifuge and spun me up to 6 Gs.
Wow.
Same centrifuge that the astronauts use, with the screen looked like you were lifting off the planet, right? The dials with the altitude and your G-forces and speed and all this stuff, like in dials. It looked like you were in a spaceship. And they had electrodes all over me to testing. And then they would ask me to do tasks while I was just about passing out. Like tunnel vision was starting to come in and everything was sparkling, and they were like, move the knob on the lower left. I'm like, lower left, where is that?
That's awesome.
Almost nobody got their tasks done correctly, but they had to test that, because what's going to happen is billionaires are going to be buying tickets. They're already buying tickets to go to space. Billionaires are not going to be wanting to go through 2 weeks of training, not even 2 days of training.
No, they're not going to want to sit in a 6G centrifuge either, So.
No, but it was fun. I made them.
Can anybody do that? That sounds like a blast.
I think this was just a very special study.
Okay, yeah, all right.
The FAA has to know, because what happens is people have panic attacks. And if you're in a capsule and you have a panic attack and you somehow open the hatch or something.
Yeah, it might have consequences for other people than just you. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't even like open, because it's just one button that loosens all 6 straps at the same time, because you need that. You need to have quick release.
Yeah, it's quick release harness. Yeah, they have that when you jump out of an airplane. Mm-hmm.
Panic attack, that is not a good idea. So anyway, that was a lot of fun. But from that experience though, you're asking me like what the takeaways are, and I could just picture I'm gonna get old, and then real old, and then pleasantly confused old. And I'm going to think I actually went to space because I had those memories, and actually lived on Mars because I have those memories.
Yeah, but you did. And, and that's one of the reasons I don't like horror stories. There's some part of your brain that thinks you're having the experience. So when you go see Star Wars, there's some part of my brain, like I remember I said this in a different interview. I would sit in the front row when I would go see The Empire Strikes Back, because there's this one scene where the snow speeders are going over those Norwegian like cliffs, and I wanted that feeling of butterflies, because my vision can only see the screen. There's no peripheral vision, and I'm in that cockpit. My brain doesn't know the difference. I felt the butterflies. There was no physical reason for me to do that. It was all optical. But that happened. And at some level, I was in that snow speeder, like flying over those dunes, especially as like a 12-year-old kid. But it's the same with anything I expose my brain to, I'm on some level, I'm changing neurochemistry. I don't know exactly how, and I'm not saying it's always harmful or it's always good. I have no idea. I'm not a neurochemist. So like, I don't know, but I know, but I'm pretty sure I know what's going on. I'm having an experience. But am I having a detached experience of reading a book and I'm going like, oh, okay, this is a Stephen King book. Oh yeah, he's going to slaughter a bunch of people. Yeah, that's going to be really horrible and nasty. Okay, I'm done with that. Or am I really into the story and now I'm there and I'm in Maine and I'm a writer and I'm walking down a treacherous highway and a truck pulls up. I mean, obviously, I'm sorry, I'm making a little bit of fun of Stephen King, but
Caravan.
he tends to write, like you were saying, I looked in the mirror and I saw bloodshot eyes and blonde hair and blah, 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 it's trope. But writers writing about writers, I always like that one too. It's like, whenever a writer writes about being a writer, they've run out of ideas. It's like, imagine something, be an astronaut, write about being an astronaut, use your imagination. But I'm sorry, I'd be a terrible editor or writing teacher.
No, some of the comments on the stories, I'm not witty, but some of our staff members, like John Thompson, who's editing with me this year, oh my goodness, he's got me laughing all the time with his comments on stories.
Well, that's awesome. I if you can put humor in the criticism, that makes it better, because I tell people all the time, like, don't read my book and say, oh, that's nice.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't help me. That doesn't help me. Tell me, I don't believe that the protagonist would say these words in that situation. That helps me. That helps me. And don't worry, my ego's not involved. I mean, of course, when you're 16 years old and you're writing, your ego's involved, because you think, oh, I just bought my first thesaurus and I'm using all these big highfalutin words, and even though they're not right, I love that. I want to encourage that. You've got to experiment with the language, right? I mean, that's how you learn. But eventually you need somebody to go, you know what, you're not Fitzgerald yet. Like, you don't need the ghost green and the, you can say these things in different ways that and make it matter, make the words matter. But yeah, it's hard, because when somebody gives me something to critique like this is a book about the eagles of North Park. I don't know anything about eagles. I don't know anything about photography. This guy's a heck of a photographer. He doesn't have any writing training. I mean, he's a really smart guy, like he's super, I may even interview him, but my job isn't to like say, wow, you're a really great photographer. He already knows that. My job is to say, if your audience, if you're trying to get your point across, try this, try this. This is what a field journal is. This is what telling a story is. And you got to get from one to the other if you want a larger audience. If you don't, that's fine. If this is going to the Audubon Society and the only people who are going to read this are the people on your Facebook group that watch the bald eagles, perfect. But if you're trying to reach thousands of people instead of hundreds of people, you might want to expand it, make it more accessible. And that's, I'm preaching to the choir here.
I hate to keep bringing it back to light pollution, but the eagles of North Park are in danger because they're putting up new lights by the tennis courts there.
See, it's all linked.
Yeah, people come to me all the time. So we started a section for the International Dark Sky Association here in Pittsburgh, PGH, idapgh.org. And
it'll be in the link. You send me the link. I'll put it I'll be in the description. That's what the description is for. Absolutely. Thank you.
People contact us. There are lights on the mattress factory. Yeah, I know. There are lights, the victory light at the Cathedral of Learning. Thank goodness Pitt doesn't win that much, because they don't put it up when they win.
I'm sorry. I'm a Pitt alum, so I can laugh. Oh my God, that's hilarious and depressing at the same time.
The Eagles of North Park are one of the things that we're trying to work with. There's our friends of North Park, and there are groups there that really care about that lighting. And I live near Hayes Woods, where it's really dark around here. So one of the things that this grant that we got did was we bought a bunch of drones, and we took a map we tried to do a map of the city of Pittsburgh, but it's 58 square miles. So we can.
Yeah. And it's weirdly shaped.
Yeah. And so I got a plane, and we did a lawnmower pattern, but they didn't know where the lawn, they couldn't see where the grass had been cut, basically. So the lawnmower pattern is terrible. It's not even the whole city.
Yeah.
So now we're looking for money to get a helicopter. That's the way to do it.
Well, you got to get the right day. Like today would be perfect, but the weather doesn't always cooperate in Pittsburgh. In fact, I was just remarking this morning about how Pittsburghers are so, if you talk to Pittsburgher in the first 5 minutes or first 5 seconds, you're going to talk about the weather. That's because it's so variable here. And it's, you know, face it, it's not San Diego, you know, it's not 82 degrees and sunny all day, every day. So there's a couple guys that I text in the morning. We do like a gratitude thing. So we say something we're grateful for every morning. And so the one guy texts me, the guy gets up at 6:30 and he says, I'm grateful for sunshine. And then the second guy, so I texted him, you know, I'm grateful I already took a walk. Second thing is, I'm grateful for sunshine. The second guy, I'm like, that's what the other guy said. He said, that doesn't count. You got to give me something else, right? So I'm grateful I get to interview a friend today. So then the third guy says, I'm grateful there's some sunshine today. I'm like, are you guys talking to each other like that? You can't do, no, you can't do that. So we're not in a group text. This is all individual text, right? But all three of them, that's not like some like cosmic coincidence. That's because they live in Pittsburgh. That's just the way we are. Like we talk about the weather, you know, it's like if it's like that joke about how do you know if a guy's how do you know if a guy is an atheist, a vegan, or does CrossFit? Don't worry. He'll tell you within the first 5 seconds.
Got 2 out of 3 of those.
I know, me too. Well, CrossFit had kicked my butt. I mean, you think P90X is tough. CrossFit is ridiculous. Those people are amazing. They should be astronauts. Those are what you want for astronauts. They're completely awesome, focused athletes. But yeah, you would need that. And I think, why wouldn't the drone work? Is it the winds?
You know, the batteries are about 20 minutes in the winter, and you have to do it in the winter because you can't have the tree cover.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, the battery life is the issue. Yeah.
You have to be in the right position, and it was so many constraints. If you just had a helicopter and you had the right moon and it wasn't wet and it wasn't snowy, and the helicopter didn't care if it's cold, so you would just do the whole, you could do it in 4 hours. So that's
my investment friends and my technological friends, they're you know, we talk about Tesla a lot. We talk about electric vehicles. We talk about, you know, GM talking about selling nothing but electric vehicles, and I don't know what their date was, 2035, I think 2035. I'm like, and they're like, one guy, he restores, he has a couple Mustangs he's restored, like classics. And I said, don't worry, you know, like there's going to be gasoline powered vehicles. There are just some things that you can't do with battery life yet. I mean, it may become available at some point, but batteries are heavy. They don't last long. Like helicopters, a terrible place for a battery, right? You're going to need a combustion engine, right? For some things until we get it right, and we'll get it, but like the technology's not there yet. So like, you know, he's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm like, they're not going to outlaw your 79 Mustang. You're going to be okay. You know, like enjoy, you know, you'll be fine.
Maggie Stiefvater is one of my favorite authors, and she has a 79 Mustang convertible, and she's done all these studies about whether it's actually better for the environment than all the chemicals that are in the batteries right now.
Yeah, there's that other part too. There's a lot of heavy elements that are used in battery and electrical storage. Well, we could go on and on about that, but like, apparently vehicles are they're not the leading contributor. You know, that's not the biggest problem anymore. There's this big thing about, you know, the inspection. I'm all for safety inspections for vehicles every year. Love it. You want to get twice a year? Fine. I don't care. That's great. I want people to have brakes when they're on the road, you know, but the emissions thing is kind of silly, because I think there was a study done. It said something like, I don't know, some ridiculous amount of vehicles, like 70% of vehicles in Western Pennsylvania are less than 10 years old. So like the emission standards on those are, you know, they're all California emissions. So like you got no problem. Air pollution is not really the issue with passenger vehicles. You know, there are other places where you should target your industrial facilities, I live across from Neville Island.
Ew. Oh.
Well, that was funny because to go back just to tie in the tomato planting, the first year I planted tomatoes, right? And I got all these great tomatoes and I ate them all. And I thought, and I passed out some. And I thought, well, you know what? I found out later that a lot of people use crops like tomatoes. Tobacco is one that they use a lot of in order to get heavy elements out of the soil. So in the summer of 2003, I may have poisoned myself with all of the particulate matter can you imagine all the particulate matter that came over and fell down into my yard? And I grew those, and I ate those. So all that stuff was concentrated in those. Obviously I'm still here, so I guess it wasn't too bad, but but these are things, these are things to think about.
Yeah. I have frogs now that are every night so loud, and this is before the cicadas are coming, but right now it's the frogs because I live in a clay bowl that's just, I bought a soil test to send out my soil to get it analyzed, but I literally could make all those pots you're making with
I was going to say clay bowls. Yeah, that's great. You wouldn't have to pay for clay, which is.
I actually mixed sand and clay and put it in a pot, in one of those cloth bag pots, those fabric pots one time, and it baked in the sun, and then I turned it out and it was bricks.
You can do that. Oh yeah, mud brick. I mean, that's how Sumer was built, right? That's what the Sumerians did. So.
This is not a good place for growing things in this.
Well, actually, the fact that you have frogs is probably a really good sign because frogs are very sensitive to chemicals and things in the environment. So, because they have that permeable skin, right? They absorb things through their skin. So that's probably a really good sign. That probably keeps you up at night, but
Yeah, but it's beautiful. But there are puddles everywhere. There are literal standing puddles everywhere because it's just bowls of clay. There's no way. So the frogs are just in heaven. They're American. What are they called? They're American toads. No, American frogs. I can't remember.
American frogs.
American.
So yeah, I know what you mean. When I bought my first rototiller, I bought an electric rototiller, and I was doing the garden for the tomatoes, and you only get down about this far, and then you hit clay. So you just, but that's good because tomatoes just need about that much topsoil. They don't need it. Their roots don't go, at least not in my garden. They don't go very deep. And at the end of the year, when I take them out, and I never used to do that, but I did it because a couple of years they had that, I forget what they called it, but you had to destroy your tomato plants at the end of the year. Otherwise, there was a fungus that was like spreading through the air. So you didn't want to mess with anybody else's garden. But I never had that problem. I never had any issues. So I'm like, I don't have those giant worms you got.
You go down a little deeper, then you get coal.
Yeah. Well, actually, with your piles, what'd you call the
Google culture mounds?
What were they called?
Google culture, HUL, HUGEL.
Google culture mounds. I've seen situations where you could stick a pipe in there and you could light it because of the methane. I don't know if that's true with Google mounds, but with compost heaps, the process, the biological process that they use, that you're going to get an exhaust, and you can use that as fuel, swamp gas. So if you ever need a torch, like if you're having a party or something.
I do want to have a party, and I want to have you over. I want to have lots of parties.
Yeah, it's time. I think it's time to start partying again.
I have big outdoor area, so I think it's time.
Well, I'm in. And speaking of time, I think we.
Yeah, I know.
And actually, I had that technical interruption was perfect, I think, because it was right in the middle of your joke. So it'll be a cliffhanger, and then I'll say, if you want to hear the rest of the joke, you got to tune in for part 2. So serendipity. That's the way we're going to work this. So, obviously, I'm not an expert on the technical end, but Diane, I had a great time talking to you as always. And there anything else you want to say before we turn off the cameras?
No,
Okay.
that was very sweet of you.
All of the information that we talked about below that we can remember and think of, and as I review this, I'll go through. We'll put as many of those links as possible in the description for you guys. And smash like for me, that helps me so much. It actually helps if you do that at the beginning. So go ahead and rewatch it and do it like in the first minute. I don't know why, but the algorithm loves that. And do something nice for somebody today and try not to get caught. And that's all I got. All right. I'm going to turn off the feed now.
All right.